Welcome back, chess friends! A couple of weeks ago, James May and Richard Hammond played a game of chess with a twist. When one of them captures a piece, the player doing the capturing has to drink a shot of gin to celebrate. This adds an unusual extra element of strategy to the game, as for example, you might want to sacrifice some pieces in order to impair the other player's judgment, although that comes at the risk of losing the game through too much loss of material. There's no time control, and in fact, the original video is about an hour and 20 minutes long, so this video is a short version where we keep track of the drinks and we have a nice representation of the board, because in the original video you can't see the board too well or what's actually going on there. And in fact, I have made another video that has the board playing in real time that you can play along next to the original video to increase your enjoyment of it. With all that said, let's start the game. We have e4 from James May and f5 from Hammond. Here, James May pauses to think for a few seconds, causing Hammond to complain a bit, but he eventually captures and has a shot of gin to celebrate. And Hammond continues with c5, and of course, this is completely winning if this was a normal game of chess, because you would play queen to h5, check, and then we'd have blocking with the pawn captures, the bishop, well, you can't capture this back with a pawn because you'll lose the rook, so the bishop moves out of the way, the pawn captures, the king comes over to defend, the pawn promotes to a queen, check, the rook captures the new queen, and the queen captures this pawn, and completely winning. But as we said, this is an unusual game, all about the drinking, so instead, James May played f6. Hammond says that's just stupid and quickly plays knight to a6. We now have bishop to b5, and at this point they both discuss how May could have actually captured the knight here, but Hammond says he's going to play a defensive move now, and he plays his knight back. We have knight to c3, so a nice developing move. Here, Hammond considers whether James is offering up multiple pieces in quick succession in order to knock him out of the game. However, May just suggests a new rule. He says, how about if you get checked, you have to drink another shot? And Hammond agrees to the new rule, so they proceed. Hammond captures the bishop, so now it's a 1-1 on the drinks counter. Now we have knight to d5, so he doesn't want to capture straight away because he wants to avoid getting too drunk. We have knight to d4, and May immediately captures e7 with the pawn. And he drinks 2-1, and we have knight captures on e7 from Hammond. He drinks, so that's 2-2. And at this point, they realise that they're going to get absolutely battered. But May compliments Hammond on his move here. We have c3 and now b5, both moves played quickly. And we have c captures the knight on d4 and knight captures d5. Both moves again played quickly, and they're on 3 drinks each. Immediately here, queen to e2, check, and now Hammond has to drink one more shot. We have queen to e7, blocking, and now d3. And here, May says his game is being dictated by his need not to have another drink. And Hammond says he's losing focus and also doesn't want another drink. But James requests some palate-cleansing snacks from the filmmakers, and then Hammond plays b4. Bishop to g5, a nice developing move, which comes with an attack on the queen. Hammond complains that this is very aggressive, but then just pushes h6. And James goes for it, captures the queen, has a drink, and Hammond is very upset. He wants to take back some moves, but James doesn't let him, so he just captures the bishop with the knight. And now here, he really should drink, but snacks arrive at the table, and James immediately plays queen to h5 with check. So Hammond takes a drink for the check, but missed out the drink for the capture. But that's okay, I'm sure he'll make up for it later on. So both players are distracted as they discuss and play with the snacks, which include Pringles, Roquefort crackers, and giant Wotsits. For non-British viewers, Wotsits are kind of like cheesy puffs. Hammond admits that they've been drinking for some time before starting the game, and eventually they do get back to the game after discussing some variations. We have g6 blocking the check, and James compliments this as being a brilliant move, although he did suggest it himself. This is attacking the queen, but James ignores it and pushes d5, so Hammond immediately captures. And before taking his drink, Hammond considers drinking it through a giant Wotsit like a straw, but in the end he just towns it as normal. So 4-6 on the drinks. King to d2, rook to g8, and they discuss whether burping is flatulence and decide it's not. We have rook to e1 pinning the knight, and Hammond captures the pawn on g2. He thought that it would mean that May needs to drink, but it soon cleared to him that he had forgotten the rules and needs to drink himself, so it's 4-7 on the counter. Hammond here is increasingly drunk and he sticks some Wotsits up his nose and pretends to be a musketeer. He regrets this immediately because his nose starts to burn. May says he doesn't mind losing, he just wants to see Hammond fall over and vomit. And at this point, Hammond attempts to demonstrate circular breathing like a didgeridoo player. We now have knight to f3 and bishop to a6. Rook to e5, and May says it would be interesting to learn more about chess, and of course we agree with him because chess is always interesting. Bishop to g7 attacking the rook, and then rook to h1 doubling up the rooks, and d6 attacking this rook twice. And here Hammond starts playing with the Wotsits again. He pretends to be Wolverine, but May doesn't know what that is. We have rook to h5, so it's a capture. May has to drink again. It is 5-7. We have rook to g1 and rook to e6, and Hammond says that came out of nowhere and it's genius. May compliments Hammond on his placement of this d6 pawn, so very nice. Bishop to c3 with check, so James has to take a drink, but surprisingly Hammond also takes a drink. I guess that makes up for the missed one earlier. Instead of capturing with the pawn, James moves out of the way, king to c2. And now here Hammond thinks he has a genius move. He plays rook to b1 and shouts checkmate. Well, it's obviously not checkmate, so May says, what are you talking about? Hammond says, well, it's check. And May says, no, it's not check, it's not anything, it's total bollocks. And he lets him take the move back. Instead, he plays rook to c1 with check. James drinks. The king captures. James drinks again, so it's equal on the counter here. And now we have a bishop captures d3. So Hammond ahead, it's 8-9. And b pawn captures the bishop. And again, it's all equal 9-9. Rook to d8, and James admits that chess is interesting. And of course, we agree chess is always interesting. Hammond here has a secret puff on his vapor, and May plays knight to e5. Hammond mentions here that he keeps forgetting which colour he is. Maybe that's something to do with the drink. D captures the knight, so increment the counter. May says that he knows how to drink to contentment rather than capacity, which is the sign of a gentleman. I think I can agree with that too. Hammond puts 2 Wotsits on his face, pretending to be Groucho Marx, and we have d6, and Hammond needs reminding which colour he is again. We have a b3, and the rook captures on e7, which comes with check, and because it's a check and a capture, both players need to drink, and this shocks Hammond. Hammond initially attempts to capture back, but May points out that it is defended. So we have king to f8, and rook captures on h6. And so it's 11-11 on the counter, but Hammond now realizes he is in massive trouble. He just plays pawn captures on a2, so 1 square away from gaining a queen, but unfortunately he's hung checkmate. Rook to h8, checkmate. May points out that Hammond should have played maybe king to g8 so that he could capture the rook if it came in, or maybe capture the pawn here so that when the rook comes in he can capture this rook back. So that's the end of the game. Very nice and entertaining, and they both have a drink to celebrate. It's 12-13 on the counter. Hammond says May won fair and square, but did he really? It's 12-13. We can see that Hammond won on the number of drinks consumed. It's lucky that these two don't have to do anything serious for a living like driving cars. I'll see you again next time.